$150 a month. That's the whole price of admission to $1 million over a working lifetime. You're picturing something bigger, right? A six-figure salary, maybe the stock pick everybody wishes they'd found. It's not that. It takes a small habit and a lot of patience, the opposite of what you'd guess. This comes from a guy named J.L. Collins. His writing is probably the biggest reason I think about money the way I do now. In 1975, someone started putting $150 a month into the market. 40 years later, this is where it landed him. $150 a month, $1,800 a year, invested from January 1975 to January 2015. 40 years, no more, no less. That money grew to $1,136,656. That's not a rounding error. That's a house paid for in cash, built out of spare change. Here's where it gets rough though. Drop the monthly number down to $130, just $20 less over that same 40 years, and you land around $985,000 instead. $20 a month is the entire distance between almost there and over $1 million. One extra coffee run a week decides it. The market averaged something like 11.9% a year across that stretch. Dividends invested, meaning the payouts got plowed right back in instead of cashed out. That's the number doing the heavy lifting here. And it wouldn't have mattered if that money went in monthly or all at once. Drop the same total in as a single lump sum on day one, walk away, and you'd land in almost the exact same place. That's the part people miss. They think the amount separates the people who make it from the people who don't. It's not the amount, it's whether the money got in the game at all. Waiting for the right moment to invest is a myth dressed up as caution. Now, I know what you're thinking. Okay, but that's 1975. Prices were different. A dollar went further. Fair point. Yes, the specific window is 1975 to 2015, but the mechanism behind it didn't expire. Compounding at market rates in an index fund works exactly the same whether you started in 1975 or you start this afternoon. Small monthly amounts plus decades plus market returns equals a number that changes your life. That shape is just as true in 2026 as it was 50 years ago. It's not an old money math, it's just math. What is $150 a month really? It's one recurring takeout order a week. That's it. This isn't some heroic sacrifice number for most people. It's a rounding error and a normal budget. I sat through 4 years of required math classes. Not one of them mentioned this. Compound interest should have been mandatory, right next to how to balance a checkbook. Instead, I got quadratic equations I've used exactly 0 times since graduation. Not one class covered the single concept that actually decides whether you retire comfortably or work until you're 70. You've just seen the math work, but here's the open question. What's actually doing the work? Turning $150 into over $1 million. That mechanism is coming, but there's an excuse standing in the way. I don't make enough. Most people assume the barrier here is income. If I just made more money, I'd finally get ahead. That's the story almost everybody tells themselves. The data says the opposite is often true. None of that compounding math matters though. Most people never get $150 free to invest in the first place. Here's why. High earners go broke, low earners get there. Wealth isn't about the size of your paycheck. It's about the gap between what you earn and what you spend. That gap is the whole game. A few years back, I was eating lunch in the break room with a guy from sales. This guy closed 6-figure deals for a living. His annual bonus alone was more than most people bring home in 2 years. And there he was, stirring his coffee, telling me he was stressed about money. I remember thinking, wait, you're broke? Turned out he had 2 car payments on cars he barely used, plus a mortgage on a house bigger than the life he actually lived in, and a credit card balance he kept meaning to knock out. He looked at me and said, man, I genuinely don't know where it all goes. Every dollar that landed in his account already had somewhere else to be. I sat there with my sad desk lunch, doing the math in my head, and it didn't add up. He made 2 to 3 times what I made, and I actually had savings. Something about that felt backwards. And it took me years to understand it wasn't backwards at all. It was just how the gap works. There's a rule of thumb that makes this click. Your savings can safely pay out about 4% a year without running dry. At that rate, someone living on $7,000 a year need about $175,000 saved to be free forever. Now think about the guy from the break room again. The mortgage, the 2 car payments, the credit card balances he kept meaning to knock out. He wasn't building towards a hill. He was building towards a mountain without ever deciding to. The bigger the life, the bigger the mountain you need to climb down from. Now, don't hear that as live on rice and beans. That's not my thing, and it's not this channel's thing. I kept Netflix. I still grab a coffee I don't strictly need. The move isn't deprivation, it's intentional spending. Know where your money is going and keep what actually improves your life. Cut what doesn't. The gap left over is what you invest, and that gap is what eventually buys your freedom. Some months the gap is bigger than others. A slow month, a tight month, whatever, that's fine. The point was never perfection. The point is that the money isn't just evaporating without you noticing where it went. Lifestyle creep is sneaky too. You get a raise and somehow it's spent before it even hits your account. New car, bigger apartment, and suddenly you're making more but saving the exact same amount as before. Happens to nearly everyone at least once. Nobody sits down and decides to spend the whole thing. It just goes, one small upgrade at a time before anyone stops to ask why. So if it's not the salary doing the heavy lifting, what is? Turns out your income was never really the thing standing in your way. The real block was internal, how you spent, not how much you made. One force actually builds the million, and it only works if you give it time. The reason $150 a month turns into over $1 million is compounding. Growth stacking on top of growth, year after year for decades. The magic was never the amount, it's the runway. The principle underneath everything is simple. Compounding needs time, so the single biggest lever you have is starting young. Every year you wait isn't just a year of missed contributions, it's a year sliced off the end, which is exactly where the growth gets biggest. Money that sits in the market for year 1 of 40 is doing more work than in year 40. The dollars you add in year 39 barely get started. That's not intuitive, it just happens to be true. For years I had money just sitting there, not spent, not lost, just sitting in a checking account, doing absolutely nothing. I'd open my laptop, pull up some brokerage sign-up page, stare at a screen full of ticker symbols. Then I'd think, I have no idea which of these is going to go up, so I'd close the tab every time. I figured investing was for people who understood something I didn't. People who could read a balance sheet and pick the right stocks at the right moment. That wasn't me, so the money sat, and I told myself I'd figure it out eventually. Here's the part that actually gets to me now. I wasn't losing money in those years, I was losing time. And time was the one ingredient I could never buy back. I think about the guy sitting at the same desk, tab closed, telling himself, later. He wasn't lazy, he wasn't reckless, just didn't know what he didn't know. And that's the whole reason this channel exists. The real cost of that shows up when you compare two people. And this time we'll use a more typical long-run market average, around 7%. Early Ellen starts putting $150 a month into an index fund at 25. She keeps it up for 10 years straight. Then life gets busy. She stops adding money entirely at 35. Not one more dollar goes in after that. Late Larry waits. He doesn't start until 35. But once he starts, he's disciplined. $150 a month, every single month for the next 30 years, all the way to 65. By the time early Ellen hits 35 and stops, she'd put in $18,000 total, and it's grown to around $26,000. That's it. That's her entire contribution, sitting there untouched for the next 30 years. Late Larry, meanwhile, is just getting started at 35, and 15 years later, at 50, after putting in more than twice what early Ellen had contributed, he's sitting at roughly $47,500, still behind her. Add up what each person actually paid in, and late Larry put in 3 times more money out of his own pocket. But by 65, Early Ellen ends up with around $210,000. She stopped contributing at 35 and never touched it again. Late Larry, who never missed a month for 3 decades straight, ends up with around $183,000. Fewer dollars in, more money out. Because early Ellen's dollars had 30 extra years to compound, and late Larry's never got that runway. And remember, this is the conservative 7% scenario, not the hot 11.9% stretch from J.L. Collins' example. The lesson holds up either way. Sit with that for 1 second. Early Ellen basically got to stop halfway through her 30s and still came out ahead of someone who grinded for 3 straight decades. That's not a fluke. That's just what an early runway does to a small number. So $150 a month isn't magic because it's $150. It's magic because it runs for 40 years. Shrink that runway down to 10 years and the same $150 a month lands nowhere close to $1 million. It barely gets warmed up. This is why I'll start when I make more, or I'll start once things settle down, might be the most expensive sentence in personal finance. Every year you say it, you're not delaying a decision, you're deleting a year of compounding you can never get back. My own years of doing nothing taught me that the hard way. The best time to start was already gone by the time I figured any of this out. The second best time is the moment you finish this video. It's this easy and it's this cheap, which raises the obvious question. If $1 million really only costs $150 a month, why is almost nobody actually a millionaire? This is possible for basically every middle-class earner, and it still won't happen for most of them. Not because the math fails, because something is actively working against it. There's a constant, well-funded push to keep people spending and keep people in debt. Every ad, every feed, every store display says you need the newer thing. And if you can't afford it right now, don't worry, there's financing for that. It's not some shadowy conspiracy, it's just business. Somebody's job is to make sure your $150 never makes it to the index fund. None of this is new either. It's just gotten better at its job. 10 years ago, it was a billboard. Now it's a feed that knows your exact price point. Earlier, this was about the choice you make, what you spend on once the money's already yours. This is different. This is the machine built to make that choice harder before you even notice you're making it. 0% financing turns "I probably shouldn't" into "why not?" Your feed is tuned by the algorithm built to make someone else's kitchen make yours look outdated. And buy now, pay later splits a $200 purchase into 4 painless little charges, so it never even feels like $200. None of that is an accident. Take your phone upgrade. Every 2 years, like clockwork. Finance monthly so it never once feels like spending real money. Your phone from 2 years ago still works fine. It takes photos, makes calls, does everything a phone's supposed to do. But the new one's sitting right there in the store, 24 easy payments, practically free. Funny how practically free always ends up costing exactly the same as everything else. Multiply that by a car every 4 years, a couch you didn't need, a vacation you're still paying off in March. None of it feels like much in the moment. All of it adds up to exactly $150 a month you were supposed to be investing. The fix hasn't changed. Spend less, invest the rest. I already showed you why the math works. This part just names the machine engineered on purpose to keep your surplus from ever reaching an index fund. I've lived it. I carry debt myself. The lesson was never don't ever borrow. It's know exactly what you're signing and don't let the payment eat the surplus that was supposed to become your freedom. That's the price most people never get right. Debt isn't the villain here. Debt you don't understand is the villain. Know the terms, know what happens if rates change, and you'll avoid a mistake that can cost you hundreds to thousands of dollars. Here's where you probably land after all this. You're ready to spend your first $150 somewhere, which is exactly where most people trip, because nobody tells them where it's supposed to go. Knowing that $150 a month builds $1 million is step 1. Step 2 is the part almost nobody explains, the account you actually put it in. Your 401k, your IRA, your Roth. Most people think of these as investments. They're not, they're just buckets. Some save you tax today, some save you tax later. Get that mixed up? and Uncle Sam ends up richer, not you. And there's a specific order you're supposed to fill them in. Get that sequence wrong, and you hand over money that was supposed to be compounding for you. Next video, I'm breaking down every one of those buckets and the exact order to fund them, so your $150 lands in the right place from day one. Subscribe if you don't want to find out the hard way.